At first, it seems pretty crazy, redshirting Levi Haines. But when you think about it, it's actually not that bad of an idea.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Only a wrestling program like Penn State's could even debate potentially redshirting your former national champion. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Help me welcome back Joe Smeltzer, beat reporter for Nittany Sports Now. You can check out nittanysportsnow.com and all of Joe's social media. I will link everything in the description where you can find Joe's work. And this conversation is coming from an article that Joe had released about the possibility of redshirting Levi Haines. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody each and every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Joe, you wrote an article about the pros and cons of Levi Haines potentially redshirting and vacating that 157-pound weight class. We're going to talk about, is this a good idea? Do they have to do this? What are the other options and the pros and cons of this? I actually like the move. I genuinely do, because Penn State can absorb the hit in the lineup. Like, they will be just fine. They can do it. And it'll benefit them for the next season and the next season after that, given all the talent that they have waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and thanks for having me as always, Zach. In my article, I didn't really talk about the cons of Levi Haines redshirting, because I think those are pretty self-explanatory, right? He's a national champion, two-time national finalist, two-time Big Ten champion, a Hodge Trophy finalist. He's one of the best wrestlers pound for pound in the country, so it doesn't take much to explain the benefits to him not redshirting and just being in the lineup. But as far as the pros of him redshirting, I think there's a few. And I think the number one is kind of what it did for one of the best wrestlers. In fact, some people probably have him at number one on their list of greatest Penn State wrestlers of all time. That's Zain Retherford. Retherford was a guy who burst on the scene as a true freshman and went 27-0 in the regular season, won the Big Ten championship, and then he made it to the Big Ten Finals, where he lost to Logan Stieber, eventual four-time national champion of Ohio State, made it to the national semis, lost to Stieber again, and ended up finishing fifth as a true freshman. And then the next season, he ends up redshirting, ends up bulking up to 149, and the rest is history. 3 national championships, 2 Hodge trophies. As far as I know, he's the only Penn State athlete to ever be nominated for an ESPY award. He was one of the nominees for Best Male College Athlete in 2017, I think it was. But, Levi Haines, I think, is at the point in his career where most wrestlers, their ultimate goal is to win a national title, but there's a certain amount, and Penn State's been blessed enough to see a good number of them to where eventually the goals exceed just winning a national title. I think Levi Haines' goal in his college career at this point is to win a Hodge Trophy and be recognized as not just the best in his class, but the best wrestler, best college wrestler in the country, pound for pound. And to do that, obviously, I think people that follow college or Penn State wrestling have a pretty good understanding that Levi Haines didn't have the easiest time with weight over the past season. So depending on what his ideal weight is, if it's 174, it's a 17-pound difference. Going back to the Retherford example, 133 to 149, that's 16 pounds. So pretty similar there. And if 174 is indeed what Levi Haines feels his ideal weight is, and what Cael Sanderson and the coaching staff feel his ideal weight is, maybe depending on how far he is from that weight, maybe the best way to get there and thus to come back and have a chance to win a Hodge Trophy or 2, win 2 more national titles, is to bulk up to 174 and to use this coming season to do that. So
I think that's a really good point, Joe, especially that there is some precedent here with Zain Retherford, and look what happened. But Levi Haines has already won the national title. He was an NCAA finalist before that. and then you are redshirting. So different circumstances slightly, but I'm glad you bring up the Retherford comparison. The reason I think it's more beneficial to redshirt Levi Haines and why it makes sense is just because of there are too many talented wrestlers that are all vying for these different weight classes, and Penn State has to find a way to keep them happy, to keep them in the weight room, because you have the transfer portal. You have David Taylor in Oklahoma State, right? That seems to be a logical destination if there's anybody that, I don't want to call them disgruntled, but if you are as talented, you don't want to spend being a backup for your entire career at Penn State when you can go wrestle and you can go compete for a medal at the NCAA level. In Levi Haines' case, you brought up that it was tough to make 157. We do know that. I don't think that he'd be able to make 157 again this season. Tyler Casack sounds like he's moving up a weight class, whether that's 149 or 157. It could be one of those two, given where Shane Van Ness lines up, but it's not going to be cutting to 141 and being behind Bo Bartlett. Casack or Van Ness are ready to take over the 149, 157 slots, whichever ones those are, how Penn State organizes them. Mitchell Mesenbrink is the one that kind of complicates these things, not intentionally, but Mitchell Mesenbrink is not moving from that 165 spot. That is his starting spot for the next couple of years. And Levi Haines would naturally just move up to 165. But who do you bump Mitchell Mesenbrink? And then there's 174 for this season, but then there's Alex Facundo. So when you look ahead to next year, you want to put Levi Haines at 174 and maybe move up Alex Facundo to 184, and Carter Starachi leaves. So now, and then there, like I said, there's so many different tangents we can go down. What does that do for Zach Ryder, for Josh Barr, for Connor Mirasola, for Cole Mirasola, right? Somebody at the end of the day is going to have to make a move, interestingly enough.
Yeah, and this law gym, Zach, it's not going to be unique to this season. It's not going to be unique to the season after that. This is just something Penn State wrestling is going to have to deal with for a very long time. One of the downsides to being an absolute empire in college sports is that you're going to recruit some very good wrestlers that are just going to have a very hard time getting into the starting lineup. I think Zach Ryder is a pretty good example of that. This is a guy that could well be one of the best wrestlers in the country. We saw what he did at the under 20 World Team Trials a month back, beating Gabe Arnold from Iowa twice to secure a spot on the world team. But he's a guy that I don't really think he has a place in Penn State's wrestling lineup this season. You'd like to think he could get there eventually, but there's just so much there, and I think it's a good problem to have, but it's still something that Cael Sanderson and company need to think about, and it's something that I don't know if the coaching staff should spend too much time trying to necessarily avoid a log jam, because the log jam's always going to be there, and somebody's going to end up getting left out, and I think it's just a matter of sending your best guys at each weight out there. And if people being left out of the lineup, left on the bench is a downside to that, you might just have to be a give and take situation. So.
Now, coming up next here on the show, does Levi Haines actually have to do this? Does he have to redshirt? What are Penn State's options ultimately? We'll discuss that coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning trophies is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to its peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into that MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Joe, I'll be honest. I actually think Penn State has to wear redshirt Levi Haines. It's a good idea. We've established that. It makes sense for this year's lineup, for the future of Penn State wrestling lineups, even though there still might be some consequences down the road. But it's from the understanding that I don't think Levi Haines can make weight anymore. So 157, that's going to be a miserable cut for somebody that just continues to get bigger and stronger. That's essentially the same thing as Tyler Casack trying to cut and make 141. Jeff Byers talked about it, that Tyler Casack's build allows him to actually move up a weight class. And that cutting would just be, it'd just be unnecessary. It would be difficult, and it takes away from who they are as a gifted athlete and a gifted wrestler. So Levi Haines, it's beneficial just for him personally. And I think that he can be an even better wrestler at 174. I know that's crazy to say, given that he's already been an NCAA finalist as a true freshman. And then as a true sophomore, he actually wins at 157. But Carter Starachi is going to give up that 174-pound weight class. I think Alex Facundo would have no issues potentially moving up to 184 as well in a future lineup. Your only other option here is to try to flip Mitchell Mesenbrink and Levi Haines. That's one option. Your other option would be to force Levi Haines to try to cut to 157 again, and then redshirt Tyler Casack. And I just don't see how that's a better idea.
Yeah, I don't know if there's really a have to in this situation. I think from a team standpoint, look, Penn State's going to win the national title regardless of I'm about 170, so if I got down to 165 and somehow used college eligibility, they'd still win the team national title. I think from a team standpoint, there's really no wrong option here because we know what the end result's going to be. It really is a matter, I think, of what does Levi Haines want to do. I think that he's done enough already in his college career. I know he's only halfway through, but he's already done enough to where he's earned a right to kind of decide what's best for him and what he wants to do wrestling-wise. If that's compete I think if he does compete next year, we both agree it's probably going to be at 165. If he feels that's what's best for him, then he should do that. If he wants to take time away and focus on either his freestyle career or getting up to 174, I think he should be able to do that as well. I think there's times when ultimately the coach has to overrule the athlete. We saw a great example of that in Maryland this March with the whole Carter Starachi situation. But preventing a guy from wrestling with a torn up knee, I think it's a little different than preventing him from wrestling a whole season at all when he would theoretically be healthy enough to compete. So I think there's definitely, I don't know if there's any wrong answer. I think as a team, Penn State's going to be fine. I think with the log jams, they're just unavoidable. So whatever, irregardless of what Levi Haines does, there's going to be a lot to sort through when it comes to just the amount of depth and talent that's on this roster. So yeah, I think even from a logjam standpoint, if you redshirt Levi Haines this year, what happens next year when both Zach Ryder and Levi Haines are coming back from redshirts? That just creates, I could create a conundrum down the line too. So I think ultimately from the outside, you kind of imagine if Levi was winning a national title and going undefeated while struggling to make weight, what would he be doing if he were at his more ideal weight? And if it is true that 174 really is the best place for him, then maybe the absolute best option is for him to focus on getting to 174, staying at 174, and then once he's there, if that takes throughout this winter and into the next offseason, if that's how long it takes, then maybe that's necessary for Haines to just forget about Penn State for a bit, focus on himself, bulk up, and then become somewhere close to the wrestler that Zain Retherford was when he was at Penn State.
Again, the entire reason that this is an issue, a complication, is of no intentional doing of Mitchell Mesenbrink. Yeah. But that's the problem, is that Mitchell Mesenbrink comes into 165, and I don't think he's going to move from that spot. I think 174 would be too big for him. And if I'm being honest, Mitchell, as talented as he is, 165 is still the wrestlers that he went up against, especially down the stretch at the end of the season when you get to the postseason, you face the best of the best, just look larger than him. But Mitchell Mesenbrink is so talented, so quick that he's able to offset that. I could see a Mitchell Mesenbrink in an alternate reality, Joe, where Mesenbrink cuts to 157, Levi Haines bumps up to 165 because those are just more natural weight classes. Now, Mitchell Mesenbrink probably would tell me, "You're crazy. This is my weight class. This is where I belong. What do you know about anything?" But just the way, again, it's just the look of the build, because I think Mitchell Mesenbrink would destroy at 157. I think he'd tech everybody. He's already more or less doing that. But I think that he just would be better suited at 157, and Levi Haines would be better suited at 165.
Yeah, that's where I am too, and that's I'll have to do an update on this at some point. But in my last update
Yeah.
of the Penn State my projected Penn State wrestling lineup was early May. It was whatever. It was a few days after Carceraci announced he was coming back for a fifth year, and I had Levi at 165, Mesenbrink at 157, and you really laid it out pretty well. I think the biggest concern of that from Mitchell Mesenbrink's standpoint is, he was so close to winning a national title at 165, and really, you could argue if he didn't have that mental lapse, he does win that national title. I think.
I think he does. Oh, yeah, I absolutely believe he does if he knows what the score truly is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, and he would be. I'd have to analyze the rest of the field at 165, but he definitely would be at least one of the favorites to win to beat a man at 165 coming into this season, no doubt about it. So knowing that and knowing how close he came to winning at that weight, asking him to move down a weight after that, to be a great wrestler, to be a great athlete, you have to have a bit of an ego. And I'm not saying this as disrespectful in any way to Mitchell Mesenbrink, but I think anybody in his situation, it'd be fair to assume, how he would take it if Cael Sanderson told him basically that we're going to have you at 157 and you're going to have to go to another weight after being so dominant at a higher weight. So how would he
Yeah.
take that? I don't know, but I think in leaving all of that out, leaving everybody's personal reaction out, I think the best
Sure.
thing this season would be to move Mitchell Mesenbrink down and to move Levi Haines up. I think the biggest question there, along with Mesenbrink's personal reaction to it, which I think he'd be fine. Maybe there'd be initial issues with it, but I think after a certain amount of time, everything would be fine there. But would Levi Haines still struggle keeping weight at 165? I think it'd be easier. But if your ideal weight is about 10 pounds heavier, maybe there's still issues too. But I think if Penn State is to wrestle Levi Haines and not redshirt him, that's pretty clearly the best option, is just to have those two swap. And I think both of those guys would be in great positions to win national titles at their respective classes.
In the final segment, to wrap it all up, we'll talk about the lineup for this season, what it still could look like. Again, there's always enough time to preview what the Penn State wrestling lineup could look like for the upcoming season. So we'll do that. Plus, a couple comments that I've gotten given Levi Haines potentially redshirting and David Taylor down at Oklahoma State. We'll discuss all that and more on the other side of this break. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. I love sports, and I love them so much that I never want the sports to stop. But as the playoffs come to an end, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like they normally do, like we all want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up any bets that I want anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all of its customers, that is right, all of the customers, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone each and every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. And the lines are up for Penn State versus West Virginia. Penn State is currently a 10.5-point favorite, minus 375 on the money line, plus 290 if you happen to like the Mountaineers, with the total set at 49.5. If you like those odds, you can jump on the odds right now at fanduel.com. And you can also bet on Major League Baseball, WNBA, Wimbledon tennis, and so much more. All you got to do is go over to fanduel.com. Once again, that's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So, as we've addressed throughout the entirety of this podcast, Penn State's wrestling lineup is going to be fine one way or another, whether Levi Haines is in it or they end up whether they end up redshirting Haines, they redshirt K-Sack. That's what happens here. You redshirt one or the other to make this lineup work this season. I believe that the best option with the least amount of consequences is to redshirt Levi Haines because it helps build for the future, and you can overcome this. You'll still have a lineup that's going to win a national championship. You'll have plenty of finalists. Heck, I think that they could even still set records, reset the NCAA records that they just set in the 23-24 season with or without Levi Haines. So the lineup is going to be just fine one way or another. You have K-Sack or Van Ness, one of them at 49, 57. You have Mitchell Mesenbrink status quo at 65. Alex Facundo is at 74. Carter Starachi could be at 84, 97. There's Josh Barr. There's Connor Mirasola, right? All these guys are going to factor in to a deep NCAA postseason runs. And all the guys that I named can easily win an NCAA championship.
Yeah, obviously losing Aaron Brooks to graduation, 4-time national champ, Hodge Trophy winner in the discussion for the most successful wrestler in Penn State history. That's going to be tough, but you're either going to have Carter Starachi move up to 197, or if Starachi doesn't make that jump or jumps to 184, you'll probably have Connor Mirasola in there as a true freshman, and that's a guy who we're both very high on. We both, I think, would predict him to be a multi-time national champ by the time he leaves Penn State. And, going back to last year's team, which was a lot better, I think, than the 2023 team that easily won a national title. That team had to replace Roman Bravo Young, a 2-time national champ, 5-time All-American, with Aaron Nagao, who didn't quite reach that status. So that was a decent drop-off at 133, but there was enough talent and enough improvement elsewhere in the lineup to where Penn State ended up having greater success last season than it did in 2023. I'm thinking one big improvement could be at 125 pounds. And this is no disrespect to Braden Davis and what he was able to do, but Luke Lillidahl, #1 pound for pound wrestler in the country, is projected, I think, by most people to start at 125. And if he's able to win a national championship as a true freshman, which I think, Zach, we saw how crazy 125 was last year and even 2 years ago, going back to when Matt Ramos pinned Spencer Lee. That weight class really is the Wild Wild West, and it could be anybody's ball game. We saw that last season with Braden Davis coming in as the #1 seed and ending up not reaching All-American status. I think if Penn State has a 125-pounder, whether it's Davis coming back, which I don't think is likely, and if it's Lillidahl, they have a guy at 125 get into that Final Four, maybe even win a national title, that would be a big improvement too. So I think you're looking across the board. At the end of the day, you're only having to replace 2 starters from last season. Granted, one of them was Aaron Brooks, but most of the horses are going to be back, and Penn State's getting some new horses too. And I think overall, there's no reason to think that this shouldn't be an improved version of last year's team, which some people feel is the greatest of all time. So that's scary to think about for everybody else.
Yeah, it's their problem and not Penn State's by any stretch of the imagination. Now, stretching the imagination here, this is how I want to finish the conversation, just for a little bit of entertainment, if you will. A conspiracy theory that has been pointed out by, I guess, more or less Oklahoma State fans. I can't remember, but I've seen it multiple times in a few comment sections when talking about David Taylor, the transfer portal. Well, Levi Haines is strategically redshirting here because his intention is to enter the portal, not lose his eligibility, and go wrestle with his mentor, David Taylor, over in Stillwater, Oklahoma. That's the big grand scheme, the master plan here is that Haines is taking the year off so that he can go wrestle his final 2 seasons with David Taylor, who, of course, again, bona fide mentor, was probably not the biggest reason, but a big reason of why he ended up staying local and committing to Penn State, because David Taylor was in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. But now that's not the case. I think it's crazy. I think if David Taylor is maybe, I don't know where he would end up. That's a little closer to home, right? I can't think of another destination where this makes sense. But Levi Haines, if he wasn't already from Central Pennsylvania, if his family didn't allow get to see him wrestle week in and week out, being a Penn State Nittany Lion, I could see possibly the case for it. But David Taylor was not the sole reason that Haines was and is still committed to Penn State and Cael Sanderson.
Yeah, I agree. I can't see that happening.
It's funny
Obviously,
though.
yeah, yeah, it's something that will be discussed. I think in the wrestling world for a while. But as you said, this is a PA guy. He's at the best program in the country. That's going to be the best program in the country. Oklahoma State's not going to challenge Penn State. I think the best case scenario for David Taylor is that they'll challenge within 3 years. So I don't think even if Levi Haines transfers to Oklahoma State, that he would be there in time to overtake or even frankly come close to overtaking Penn State. I think there's some selling points there. Obviously the relationship with David Taylor. Haines was Taylor's first student at the M2 training center, which was a pretty big talking point leading into the Olympic trials. But I think another selling point would be that David Taylor, if he does try to get Levi Haines, which technically he wouldn't be allowed to do without Haines entering the transfer portal, but hypothetically, if Taylor was talking to Levi Haines, a big selling point would be the chance to kind of start a renaissance at Oklahoma State, which is what David Taylor did a dozen years ago or so at Penn State. But I think overall, for a PA guy to leave Penn State wrestling, that just sounds a little crazy to me. I think if it's anywhere, it's going to be Oklahoma State. But I don't think Penn State fans have to worry too much about Levi Haines ending up in orange and black. I think he's a Penn State guy until the day he graduates.
Sorry, Oklahoma State fans. It's just not happening. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I encourage you to go check out Joe's work. It'll be linked in the description. He's the beat reporter for NittanySportsNow.com, covering football, men's basketball, wrestling, and so much more when it comes to Penn State sports. Joe, thanks for the conversation. I thought this was a fun one, a thorough one, as Penn State and as we get closer, it's only going to get more interesting and entertaining down the stretch before the season actually starts.
Absolutely. Thanks as always, Zach.
And as always, thanks so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Be a part of the discussion. Do you think Levi Haines should redshirt? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? If he doesn't redshirt, where do you think he should wrestle next season? Be a part of the discussion down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please do leave a like on the episode. Share it with friends and family. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And of course, don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app.